In terms of the single-use plastic ban, how long before we actually see kind of the nitty-gritty, an actual bill that details what this looks like?
Well, first of all, I mean, I think first, plastics is actually a great innovation. The problem we have is too much plastic pollution. And I think Canadians across the board, I hear from them every day. They're like, gosh, they're seeing images of whales filled up with plastic pollution. So we can do a lot better, and we can keep the value of plastics in our economy. So bans are one tool for sure. When you think about the ubiquitous plastic straw, if you go into many coffee shops now, they don't offer you a plastic straw. They might have an alternative like a paper straw. So we can innovate and create alternatives. The ban will be based on science, but if you look at other places like European Union, also aiming for 2021, they're moving forward. And I think we all know we can do a lot better. I would say we didn't get out of the Stone Age because we ran out of stones. We got smarter, and businesses across the board are innovating, creating new products. So it's a 42,000 jobs opportunity too to tackle plastic pollution. Deloitte did the analysis for us. Also reduces carbon pollution. As we reproduce these plastics that we throw out, and we can keep them in our economy.
How do we get to that 42,000 number? I was curious about the job creation component of this, because there will be fears about job losses for sure. How do we create jobs here?
Well, so 42,000 is based on if you set a target like the European Union of keeping 95% of the plastics in terms of recycling in your economy. It's just, even if you think about recycling facilities, that we could do a lot better. Right now, we're recycling 9%. So everyone goes home diligently putting their plastics in their blue bin here in Ontario, and we're not recycling. So we could do a lot better. And the other part of our announcement maybe doesn't get as much flashy attention, but it's about holding producers' responsibility for the full costs of the plastics recycling, and really making sure that the recycling rates, that we're actually hitting recycling rates, because too few plastics being recycled. And we worked with business. I had a task force that included industry players, including the chemical industry, but including folks in the recycling industry, businesses who are innovating, representatives from municipalities, because everyone wants to tackle this.
How do we do better on recycling? Because it's been shocking, and this is not in some ways not a news story. We know that even though we go through the motions, a lot of what we put in those separate bins winds up in landfill. How do we fix that in a way that's actually meaningful and urgent?
Well, BC has extended producer responsibility. So they've said, producers, you're making the plastics, you collect it. And it's been highly successful. So people are actually, the recycling rates are a lot higher. But interesting, they've also created an industry. Because if you're going to use recycled content, you have to have a system that works, and you have to have a volume of plastics. So they're actually able to create the volume. So you go to a place like Merlin Plastics in BC that I've visited, they take all the plastics, they create little little balls, and you can use it again. Lush Beauty products, a great example, continuously reusing plastics. And so we have this opportunity to take a life cycle approach. It's not just banning, it's everything from at the front end, innovating on the type of materials we use, using recycled content, yes, banning, but also recycling. And we can definitely do better. But municipalities, towns and cities are really struggling. So they need the businesses that produce the plastics to step up.
We've heard a really short reply from the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. Short because, of course, there's a lot that's not known about what will be banned and what it look like. How much consultation can you do to all those? Because right now, if you run a small business that you single wrap a sandwich, you're worried that you're going to have to come up with some expensive innovation.
So, I mean, the goal for bans, and we should be very clear about it, it'll be based on the science, but also, is there a good, affordable alternative? And that's important. But look, I like takeout as much as anyone. I often go to my local Y. I go swimming in the morning, and I go to my Y, and my Y is now using paper containers because they know they want to be part of the solution. It's not fancy. So it's really about how do we find alternatives where we do use plastic? How do we make sure we recycle it? We keep the value in the economy. We're literally throwing out $120 billion every year of plastic value, because we can reuse that. That's also good because you're not going to produce emissions to create new plastics. So there's ways about being smarter about this, and the consultation piece is really important. So for small businesses who are wondering, wait a minute, what does this mean? There's going to be a consultation, and making sure that we have safe, good, affordable alternatives is key.
I think many Canadians have been shocked to know how we handle our garbage. That what winds up in foreign countries and they don't want it. We need to take it back. Plastic that ends up in the ocean is the same thing. I don't think any of us intend that anything we send to our landfill is going to wind up in the ocean. How do we stop those things from happening? How do we, first of all, keep control of our own garbage better?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, that's why you have to do a whole bunch of different things. I look at kids. Kids are always good because they're way ahead of us. They are bringing their water bottles. They don't buy plastic. It's very unusual to see a kid who doesn't have their reusable plastic water bottle. Many of them have steel straws or won't use a straw. And I'm seeing businesses like IKEA just announced that they're no longer going to have single-use plastics in their cafeteria. So there's many approaches. And as I say, it's the innovation piece that is great. Plastics is amazing. So let's be clear. Plastics is used in everything from our cell phones to our cars and our planes. Right. It's lighter. It's a great material. It's just the pollution part. And so you got to do a whole bunch of things. You can keep the value. We can innovate, create new opportunities, and we can create good jobs. And also, most of all, the cost that we have of what we're degrading. Our oceans, our rivers, our lakes. People are thinking about going to their cottages, going canoeing in Algonquin Park. The last thing you want to see is it covered in plastic.
It's kind of a motherhood thing to say, right? We don't want plastic bottles in the rivers. When do we get a bill? When do we actually get hard details around what businesses need to do, what will happen if they don't?
Well, so we're immediately doing a review of the science. We already know there's lots of science out there. We want to work as soon as possible. Of course, hearing from different players, whether it's industry or environmentalists and Canadians, about their views and looking at where are there good alternatives? Where is it too hard to collect? Imagine if you tried to collect every plastic straw. Right. Because you didn't want, it would be almost impossible. So we need to look at alternatives there. But there's always going to be exceptions because I hear often, well, wait a minute, I need to use a plastic straw because there's an accessibility issue. So we need to be thoughtful about how we do this. But Europe is moving forward. You have cities doing bans. You have businesses, charging for plastic bags. There's many ways that we can do a lot better.
We are very close to a federal decision on TMX. Just square that for me in terms of where that might go and your portfolio. You're thinking around, how we proceed with that, if we proceed with that, and some of our commitments on climate change.
Well, I'm very involved with this because we need to make sure that we are protecting species at risk, southern resident killer whale. We need to be doing the proper consultation and accommodation with Indigenous peoples. Of course, I care about climate change, how this fits in with our climate plan. And no decision's been made because we've said it'll only go forward if we do it in the right way. But this fits in a number of ways. One, there's a lot of attention, probably with your viewers, on Bill C-69. So this is legislation to improve the way we do environmental assessments. TMX is an example of how the previous system failed. The previous system did not bring folks together at the beginning. It didn't create a process that had the trust of the public, and it ended up having us in court. That is not where we want to be. So we're rebuilding environmental assessments. So decisions are made on science. You're doing proper engagement with Indigenous peoples, but at the same time, making sure that reviews are done in a timely way with transparency, that you're working with provinces, that you're providing the permit lists and information to businesses so we can get a much better system, one thing. Two, on climate change. I know people are thinking, well, if you go forward with a pipeline, how does that make sense? This pipeline, and it's a twinning of an existing pipeline, is really intended to get the fair value of the product. Right now, we're relying on one market, and so it's not going to increase by a barrel how much we're buying here, how much we're using here internationally. But it's about the transition, and the transition is critically important. This fits, has to fit within our national climate plan. We have said there will be a price on pollution in Alberta and other provinces, led by Conservative politicians who are moving back on climate. There's a hard cap on emissions in the oil sands, so it has to fit within that. But my goal is to really try to bring folks together because on the other hand, we have Conservative politicians, and it is very unfortunate from Doug Ford, who's cutting all these programs, including programs to protect against flooding and protect against forest fires while we have floods and forest fires. Jason Kenney saying climate change is a flavor of the month. I work with good businesses. They know it's not the flavor of the month. And, Andrew Scheer, who wants to kill the environmental assessment process. So goal is moving forward, and we need to get our natural resources to market, absolutely, but we need to do it in a sustainable way.